I would find with good or I don't actually know that whole song. I don't think I ever I don't think I've ever heard more than it. Good or huh. Oh. One oh not all of it, but like huh. It goes to the I I don't I'm tired. I'm hella tired. I don't even know particularly why because like I've been getting vaguely decent sleep. And why? Okay, I say that my sleep schedule's been worse than it's been in a while. I tell you that. I tell you that, and I tell you that. No, it is. Yeah, it is. It's fine, right? Because I've just answered my own question as to why. But um, w- wait, wait. I've forgotten how sentences work. What was I gonna talk about? No, okay. Recently, I got a pair of gloves, two pairs of gloves. It was a two-pack. So, and it was like 150 for them. So I was like, hell yeah, these seem to fit. They're about the right size. So I got them. And with one of the pairs, I was like, okay, I'll make it into fingerless gloves because then I can still like do things, but still, be warm. Oh, how naive of me. Because I didn't particularly have to do much earlier today. So I went to put on the other gloves that had all of their fingers so that I could have warm fingers. But but then I find out, oh no 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 no. I don't get to wear full fingered gloves, or at least not these ones, because the fingers were too, which was weird because the palm fits fine. The palm is great, but to make it fit, I was like, okay, I'll chop off the very tip of it, and then be like, okay, I can. It is below my my first knuckle on all of the fingers. It is. This is ridiculous. This what are you doing? What are you doing? What is this shit? Oh, I didn't fix that. That's fine. That is grand. I I finally figured out how to have the activity show up. Nice. Um, don't like stay up continually because if you got something in full screen, then it doesn't show up. But that does mean that whenever I tab out, if something's happened, I'll be able to catch it. I know. Look at me go. I'm slowly, so slowly, upgrading. I would fix that because, okay, technically, give me a couple minutes. I'll get to Hexceed eventually. But yeah, I forget to do things otherwise. But one of the things that is slightly annoying is that stream elements only takes in when people follow, not when people unfollow. So when anybody unfollows, um, it stays at the number as if nobody had unfollowed. No. Yeah. It's always like, wait, when did that happen? Oh. Oh, it didn't happen. That's why. But yeah, we're doing Hexceed today. It's gonna be chill, hopefully. I hope. I hope. I desperately it's updating. Okay, nice. It's no longer updating. Okay. Actually nice. No, go away. What? Ah, let me let me look at OBS, please. Please. But yeah, tell me if um okay. If any of the audio needs to be changed. But I can't really tell. Thing is I'm not listening to it. Or at least I'm not listening to it at the same level that you are. So yeah. That does tend to make it a tad more difficult. Just a little bit, not much, but yeah, makes it a little bit harder to judge how loud things are when you can't hear them. I know it's quite surprising, I will admit. Quite the startling revelation, but it does. It does affect how you perceive things when things are processing differently, you know? It's quite baffling of a not occasion. Not occasion. Concept? Yeah, we'll go with concept. But yes, here I am. I am here to be a little bit of a bitch. So this is generally my ranty bit. Day. Day. So we had an Irish oral test today, where basically you have to learn off these stories. You'll be given pictures to give you a vague idea of how the story goes, and you have to recite that story. And you have to memorize 20 of these. In case they're called shra, but I don't expect anybody to know that. Because, you know, not the biggest country. But yeah, they're and we were getting tested on 2 of them. And they're like, 20 people in our class, we have an hour. So she couldn't test us on every single box, right? Because she wouldn't have enough time. And, you know, we have other shit to be doing. The fuck is it? Oh, that. But, my table is on the opposite side of the room than where her desk is. So she'll normally start with the table closest to her and move her way around. And she was gonna ask us on 2 to 3 of the boxes on either shra. She gives us time at the start of the class, like as a group, like in all of the class, to go over the shra, and then she'll like go around, and if you aren't like first, then you keep looking over them if you feel like it. And obviously I was hella happy about this because I was probably gonna be going somewhere near the end of the hour, you know? I was one of the last 4 people, seemingly. And then this motherfucker, right, turns to her and goes, "Sorry, miss, could you start at the other side of the room?" And that's a fair request, right? I'm not upset about them asking if she could start at our side of the room. But it's not even like they just sat there and very loudly had conversations and didn't even, I think, glance at the fucking thing. Like, Jesus, like, if you're gonna, just annoying because like, I could have sat there for like 40 minutes, being like, calming myself down, because I'm very bad at spoken tests because it's not even that I'm really shit at the language, at speaking the language. I can hold conversations like if I'm not stressed, but it's the stress of, oh, this person knows Irish. I will, if I fuck up, I'm a failure. Yeah. I like my brain. It's so great to me. So then it's not even just, okay, you have to start fucking talking. It's now you have to start talking immediately. You don't get a chance. But yeah, and even if they just sat there stewing for like fucking the class, but no, they were like screaming at each other. It, like, fucking hell. Yeah. That's pretty annoying. It wasn't even like a can you start over there to give me more time to look over it. No, it was a start over there so that I can scream. So that I can start like somebody produced a tennis ball and started throwing it. Who? Where? Where did you get that from? Where did you produce that tennis ball from, my friend? Not my friend. Really not my friend. But like, how did you, what? Where did it come from? How did, what? But yeah, so that's how that's going. That's the delight. The delight of that. It's going great. To be fair, it went kind of okay. Like, others have gone better. I'm fairly decent at the schwa generally because I figured out a tactic. Like, I'm semi decent at stringing together sentences, but it's actually having the like the vocabulary to make the sentences. So like, it's not, how does one explain? It's like verbs and nouns that I have problems with knowing. It's not all the little bits in between, like, oh, like the and on, beside. Those are fine. It's like, not chair. I'm fine with chair. But it's like stood and shit. So I've figured out a tactic of just write the keywords on the back of the schwa and then lie. Because technically you're supposed to learn off a story, right? That's how you're taught to do it. You're taught that you write out a story for it and then you learn it off. Or that you get or that you take somebody else's story and learn that off, right? And that probably works for quite a few. But no. No, it does not help. I am very bad at learning like big blocks of text. Like, yeah, it does fuck all. But if I just have a short list of keywords for each, then it seems to go down pretty damn decently. It's only taken me all, like all of my life to learn even very basics of how I study. It's only taken a really long time. Fine. Perfectly fine. No, I know how to study for history. I don't do history. I haven't done history in years. And I just bullshit like this. Where? Okay. Alright. Here all the they are quite nice. I don't know why, but my eyes have hurt the entire day. Like normally they'll hurt for a bit. A small bit of time, right? And then it'll go away again. But it hasn't gone away again. I don't know how to feel of it. Because it's just for the most part it's just been general like, oh, that's like annoying but I can deal with it. But then every now and then it'll just become, oh, I can't open my eyes. If I do, I will break down. I love that, really. I mean, what would I love more? Pain. I have a really stupid end that I'm not actually sure if I'm gonna go through. I'm not sure. I might. I'll think about it. But I also might. No, it's one of those things. There's there's gonna be a fucking there's possibly gonna be a snowstorm in Ireland within the next couple weeks, right? Which normally a delightful thing, but it could be happening in March, which fuck up a lot of plans. Like for one example, my year or some of my year is going to Madrid. Barcelona? I don't know. They're going to either Madrid or Barcelona or like 4 or 5 days in March. But if there's a snowstorm, that might not happen because, not exactly easy to make planes fly if they can. And then there's just also a couple, like, a mere other plans that people have. A lot of people have plans for March specifically. I'm not really sure why, but they do. Like, what's so enthralling about March? Why do so many people March? What is the appeal of March? No? Because I certainly don't. Shit month. Sorry if you're like really attached to March. It's just so. It's worse than January. That's hard to achieve. That's not an easy feat, right? That's not a simple thing. Like, oh yeah, this month's worse than January. March, I fully believe, is worse than January. That's saying a lot. I lose my circulation in January. My fingers, they don't work in January. So these last couple of days have also been bad. We had to go outside for a day, which understandable. We were playing tennis. Unfortunate thing about playing tennis, and I did have gloves, but they were the fingerless gloves because I was like, oh, I'll probably be inside for most of the day because I thought he was gonna make us do like Tabata again, and honestly, I think I'd prefer Tabata. I hate Tabata. I think I'd prefer it because like at least that went by fast. Like you didn't really process time because you were just in pain. It was just everything was going really stop. And now we've got tennis, and I don't know how to feel about it. I don't, because like on one hand, no more Tabata, but on the other hand, no more fingers. On the other hand, my circulation, it wasn't as bad as it's been in the past. I think mainly because I did have gloves. No matter how inefficient they were still there. Which is better than nothing. Been a while. I don't know. I'm exhausted. It is. I am unnecessarily tired. Or I'm getting hit more with tired than I normally am. I don't appreciate. Unsurprisingly. I don't see whoever like not quite bone exhausted, but pretty damn tired. Pretty goddamn tired. I just yawned like 5 times. This is bullshit. We're gonna start science, not computer science. We're gonna start group projects science again. I'm not looking forward to them. Like, hello, cicada. Like, I don't. Not even that I particularly dislike group work. I've gotten stuck with not even a No, it's a shit group. I did most of the work last time. Yeah. How you doing? Able to go to school. Oh, fucking suck. Well, yeah, no, it fucking sucks. Normally missing school is like, hell yeah. Stay at home and do shit. Not when you're really sick, though. In one of the clubs I'm in, it's kind of just like get together of people. Devastating. Able to do my quiz in maths. Oh no! Oh no! Not the maths quiz. Yeah. I'm only actually in 2 clubs. But yeah, in the one that went on today, people were just kind of talking, and somehow they got to the topic of like COVID and how it affected them, and a lot of people were just saying, "Oh yeah, I just had to like stay in my room for a couple days," or "Oh, I got a couple headaches." Me sitting in the corner, having been basically comatose in the time I got COVID. Not like, okay, unresponsive. That was nice. The comparison of immune system rate. Sat in the corner going, "Oh, you lucky fuckers." Somebody was like, yeah, I got a mild fever for like 3 or 4 days, sitting in the corner, having had a horrific fever for like 5 days straight. Nice. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it fucking sucked. It's one of those things where it's like, having to blow my nose every 5 seconds. That's just kind of every cold ever, though. But yeah, understandable. They're the types of people that have tissues on them constantly, even when unneeded. Then they're the types of people that I'm plugging my nostrils with tissue. An innovator, I see. Yeah, there are two types of people. One who has tissues on them no matter if they need them or not, and then the people that never have tissues on them even when there's actively snot hanging out of their nose. You're one or the other, you cannot be both. There is no third option. Hey. Woohoo. Oh fuck yeah. Fine, I'm only kind of a dumbass. Only slightly. It's fine. I was like, oh yeah, surely there will be no more here. Surely there won't be. Then guess what? Guess what there was? But I swear to God, some people are genuinely like I thought that my year was don't always sometimes like I don't really need this. Yeah. You are the one exception. I don't remember what I was talking about. No, yeah, I do. I thought anyway. I thought that my year had gotten like past being really like bad people and like misogynistic and sexist. That no, it hasn't happened. I will say I blame Andrew Tate, all of it, because people were kind of decent last year and then they come back and they, oh yeah, the top G, yeah. That is my impression. I will be taking no criticism. Like, why did you do this? Like, I'm fully in the belief that most of it was like a publicity thing. I think it was, and even if not most of it, definitely the most like outrageous bits. Or at least I can hope. I can hope, you know? I can hope. Oh, wait, fuck. What? Oh. Believes in support Andrew Tate? Apparently. Like, there are people writing on the walls in the fucking bathrooms, free the top G. Like, fun fact though, he's gotten another extension on his detainment for 30 days, which I am happy about. He got that extension yesterday or like the day before. It was pretty recent though. So another month without him. What can I say? Except thankful that I don't have to see clips of him. Wait, it's what they call Andrew Tate. That's what they call him. It is a really weird, like, okay, so most like large internet personalities have like at least vague cults of personality. Some of them worse than others. Dream. Like, I'm just looking at his bald face makes me angry. Exactly. It's like, why do you look like that? Not even that. Why do you have to... If you're gonna say outrageous things, don't have a face that people can trace you back to. That's why I'm faceless. I'm here to insult some people. Yeah, that's why. I'm here to make some incredulous accusation. And you too, sure. But yeah, it's like a lot of like internet celebrities. They have like kind of varying degrees of cults of personality, right? Fucking Tate's is ridiculous. It's like, Jesus Christ, you've genuinely ruined a generation. You've ruined a generation. What have you done? Like, I know one of my teachers has genuinely, like, banned any mention of him in our first year classes. Laptop versus the boys. This whole war. Oh, God. Not another internet one. No. Oh, I'll just go back to Tumblr. I want to return to Tumblr, but I also... been a while. They have people they look up to, which, like, I'm rooting for the flops. The boys. That's just a fun word to say. It's probably not how anybody says it, but it's fun. But I also don't know what these people think writing anonymously in a secondary school toilet free Andrew Tate. I don't know what they think it's gonna do. Like, it's not going to help. It's not going to do anything. Go back to being a keyboard warrior again. Like, Jesus, keep that shit out. Get rid of it. We've also been given vague permission to go over like anti-people graffiti with other graffiti, which I do say I'm going to look forward to. Because it's getting to the point where they're like, yeah. First it was pretty fucking funny, now it's just being douchebags. Oh my god, people being douchebags, who could have thought? Okay, Nicki Minaj, etc. Oh. Giga Chad guy. What I do know is that they say it like the boys. Hell yeah. God. I don't like Andrew Tate. I think the Giga Chad guy is just kind of entertaining from a distance. But I really don't know how to feel about IShowSpeed. Because it's like... Wait, I might be thinking of the wrong person. I might be thinking of... They all kind of blend together after a while. Oh yeah, no, because it's like... I don't know. One of those things where you kind of have to hold him accountable for the things he does, but he's also kind of just stupid kid. Oh, I'm so invested in flop toppers. The boys more than school. I'm not sure anybody... No, there are people that are like genuinely invested in school, and you know what? Good for those people. Sorry, I'm just having fun zooming in and out. I'm trying to process the numbers and it's not working, so I'm just going... Pussy war. Oh, that is fantastic. Oh, that's great. I love that. Da-da, da-da. Oh. That is... God. The great... Not the great. No. Stopping that there. Videos of the flop top icons with black and white filter that's the Pussy War lost footage. Yes. You know what? Fair enough. And do what they want, I guess. As long as you kid me not. Oh? Oh? You didn't get me a baby goat? How could you? How could you? I trusted you to provide me with a baby goat. And now you're kidding me not? With their own island, with their own flag. Oh. Oh no. Like, it's funny, but my god. Flop Tropica. That's a decent name. Well, decent. That's a semi-decent name. Fuck. Fuck. Is both English and Spanish. Fair. Fair. Off. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. One of them's gonna be over here. 100% accepting it. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. We love that. We love and appreciate. we enjoy. No, there was something. Let's see, Spanish. There are 5 provinces? God damn. That's a lot of effort to put into a fake island. Props to them for that. But, there was a video on, like, the adverse. Sorry, I'm jumping topics aggressively here. My brain did a connection, so I'm talking about it now. There was a video made on, like, male, like, pill contraceptives. Apparently, Floptrap is getting attacked. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm done. I'll let you talk. It's fine. You can rant as much as you want. I do the same. Yeah, there was a video on, like, the pill version of a test pill version of male contraceptives. Like, yeah. And, it was basically, okay, I say a video, I mean a reel on Instagram. And it was basically going through a bunch of articles that were like, oh yeah, male contraceptive study stopped after, side effects were discovered, and basically a lot along the lines of that. But the only side effects it mentioned in the articles were like mood swings and acne. So that's taken a lot of people to, like, take the mick out of it. I wasn't ranting, I was just letting you know about this interesting community. Okay, fair enough. And, yeah, so a lot of people, and me, like the very intelligent person I am, decided I wanted to know what the people in the comments were saying about it. And one of the main, there were 2 I got cough drops. Hell yeah. The 2 main sides were, fucks no, men shouldn't have to take contraceptives. It's, a woman's, like, responsibility. And the other side was, well, look at this laundry list of, symptoms women get from taking contraceptives. Weird, I can't taste it. Ooh, nice! And, like, like, obviously there were people that were, like, not screaming and ignoring everybody else's opinions and being like, well, this is kind of why it happened. The main thing about, what do you mean nice? I'm sarcastically. The main thing that happens with, like, drug testing and new medicine testing is that, for it to be, like, publicized and, like, for the, general populace to be allowed access to it, it's fine. You're allowed to not understand my what? Sorry, the mouse stopped working. You're allowed to question my tone when it's confusing. What is wrong with my mouse? Okay. But yeah, yeah, the symptoms caused by the drug or medicine have to be less severe than the thing that they are preventing, which for females is it's preventing pregnancy, which can cause a fuck ton of medical complications in labor, before labor, after labor. It's like there is a myriad of problems it can cause. So people decided that it was worth it to put it out to the public. But for males, there aren't really any medical side effects to making somebody else pregnant. Because, like, they don't carry the child. Like, there are virtually no medical side effects to it. So, the side effects that what are you on about? Male contraceptives. There was a pill version that was almost made, but there were some side effects to it, so it didn't go through and it was shut down. And people got angry about it, so I'm ranting about how stupid some of these people are. But yeah, because people with penises do not, or that used to have penises. God, sorry, my head's not working. Because there aren't many medical side effects to them making somebody else pregnant. Any side effects caused by, my head isn't working either. Hell yeah, solidarity. Any side effects caused by a drug to prevent impregnation are not seen as the drug or medicine is no longer seen as beneficial. So they scrapped it. The main thing is I'm not sure about I don't know. There were so many so many angry people. There was a comment thread with like 3, you can't get pregnant from taking a drug. No, but taking a drug to stop you from getting pregnant or from stopping you from getting other people pregnant can have side effects. And for people that can carry children, what's the drug? But yeah, they're basically the side effects caused by the female contraceptive pill are seen as less than the possible side effects of an unwanted pregnancy. Whereas the side effects in this specific male contraceptive pill were not seen as worth it, as there are virtually no medical side effects to somebody making sperm. Like, there probably is somewhere, but not in the majority. So yeah, it wasn't seen as worth it. And I think a lot of people were just being like, oh yeah, men couldn't handle a single day with a... Basically, a lot of people weren't getting the point. Mainly because the video didn't specify that. The video made it out to be that, it was shut down because it caused mood swings. But that wasn't the only side effect. I don't know all of them. But yeah. But it wasn't seen as beneficial. So it was shut down. the thing I'm pissed off about is that they didn't even try to figure out like a different like formula to it. They just saw that this either one or like I don't actually know how many different types it was, but like this one had some side effects and then it was like immediately shut down. Like there wasn't even like an attempt to, well, there might have been an attempt to find other ones, but if there was, I couldn't find it. And then other people, there was a weird mix of misogynists and misandrists. There were people being like, "Oh yeah, that's not something that we should have to do." It's, and other people being like, "Oh yeah, well if female contraceptives have such a laundry list of side effects, then just don't take them." Which they didn't get the point of. Some people have to take them. Like some people suffer from anemia due to their menstrual cycle. They have to take the contraception to regulate it at the very least, if not stop it entirely for a while. And then there was the people being like, "Oh yeah, well it's the women's job to make sure that they don't get pregnant." One, no. It takes two people to make a baby. Two, some people, on the complete other side of it, some people can't take female contraception because it's genuinely dangerous. Are you enjoying this conversation topic, Cicada? You having fun? And then there were people being like, "Oh yeah, well there are less side effects to the male contraception than the female contraception," which, to be fair, can cause cancer and and strokes. If you get migraines, you're at a higher risk of strokes. It's kind of easing my headache. Hell yeah. I don't know how, but I'm glad to have helped. But yeah, people were like, "Oh yeah, there are less symptoms to this male contraception than there are to the female pill." And they're also kind of missing the point. Like, yes, there were less like side effects that they know of. They probably don't know of all the side effects because it was shut down. They probably don't know any of the long-term side effects, or if there are any, you know? So one, you can't really prove that, and two, it was there were, I think, 360 men involved in the testing of the contraception, and the symptoms appeared in a higher like frequency. Also, I thought Bob Ross was still alive. I know, it's like every now and then, for not even every now and then, but a couple of years ago, when I was kind of just using the internet for random videos, and so probably when I was like, up until I was probably like 11-ish, and I wasn't really searching for anything in particular, I was just consuming, which didn't end well. And like I'd go over to my grandma and she'd be watching like Bob Ross's videos. I'd be like, "Oh, And I only realized, like, a couple years after that, yeah, he had been dead for a while. Like, that was, I fully believe, the most shocking revelation to my preteen mind. Wonder if my mom knows about him? Maybe. He very well might. Maybe less likely, but still maybe. But yeah, there were... Yeah, basically. But even she's older than him? Oh? Somebody older than Bob Ross? Can't happen. No, you're lying. Takeda, why would you lie to me like this? Nobody can be older than Bob Ross. No, my fucking English teacher, right? I fully believe that she's on something. Because she... once she talked for 50 minutes straight. Which, you know, fair enough. I get that, I do it. But she just didn't talk about anything, and she's supposed to be teaching a class. You know? And one of the things that she said was that, like, okay, no, she said two things. One of them was, I don't have the exact wording, but basically, everyone's suspicious of somebody that's not, that they don't recognize, and they might be more inclined to blame them when something bad goes wrong. No, miss, you're just slightly racist. When you're done with your rant, I want to rant about something else, fair. And then the other thing that she said was that, you can't teach, like, old people don't tend to, like, change. Oh, all of those brain diseases say otherwise. Tell that to my grandmother who had dementia and my granddad that had, like, what, 3 strokes? Yeah. Yeah, tell that to them. Let's see if they've changed at all. Yeah, let's check. But yeah, you can rant now. Go ahead. My grandma has dementia, I think. Ooh. It sucks. But alas. Hey. Can we talk about teacher genders? Sure. Go for it. Have you ever met a male English? Have I ever... Oh my god. Oh. I have. I had a... To be fair, he was a training teacher. He was doing... Not actually sure if he wanted to go into English. He did outright say the N-word. Which... He was as pale as a fucking ghost. I had, like... Was it harder? I don't know, it was like... 4 years ago at this point. But Jesus Christ. Like we were just going about class. It was I do think he was reading something out, but does that really change it? But I've never met a male English teacher. Who knows? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Maybe they don't. maybe they're seeing you. Have I ever come across a female math teacher? Oh, all of my there is, I think, 2 male math teachers in my school. Like, it is predominantly female. There are so many of them. It's like, I don't know, there are a bajillion of them. Though to be fair, we don't have many male teachers overall. We're also not a new school, but we're a newer school, so we tend to get a lot of the people that are like out of college for a year or two. So I think it's more female teachers are going in to be maths teachers rather than because math was definitely like seen as like, oh, this is something men do, and English was seen more like wishy-washy poetry. Oh, that's for women. What are your language classes? There's Irish, which is mandatory, then German, French, Spanish. Czech, or was it French? It was French. I don't do a language anymore though. Well, I do Irish, but I could not handle learning more than one. It didn't work. I was basically failing both of them. And now I'm not quite failing. I'm doing remarkably better Irish now. Yeah. It's not even that I like languages. I just hate how languages are taught. Languages are taught so you pass the test, not so that you know the language. It might be that languages are easier for you, that's how your brain's wired, or it might just be that your language classes are just taught better. That is another possibility. The Irish education system is it's ancient. I was shook when people were failing Spanish. Fair. But yeah, it's not even like I dislike languages. I cannot stand the way they're taught. Literally everyone hates Spanish class. God. I think that's because people go into Spanish thinking it's going to be, like, easy. When really German's probably the closest to English out of the choices. Or at least out of those 3 choices. Like, it's still not, like, easy to learn. Or, like, oh, you'll look at it and then you'll know. Like, it's still a language, but it's closer because... Mainly because the words just sound more similar. 10 out of 20, over 25 people turned in the project, mind you. Jesus Christ. Okay, even I was never that bad. Like, sure, I was more learning how to cheat than I was learning how to know Spanish, but I was still doing the work, even if not by my own merit. Might have been more than 10. That's still, like... But yeah, the Irish education system is genuinely tight. Like, most teachers teach to the syllable, and for most subjects that's fine. For like accounting and maths and English and fucking like chemistry and the sciences and the much more structured ones, that's fine. But for things like art and music and languages, which are a lot more wibbly, it's like, stop it. Because yeah, the common thread through all of the years that I failed a language or almost failed a language or barely passed, the most consistent thread was that they were teaching you, one, like you already were fluent in the language, and two, they taught you so that you would pass the test. Probably the teacher's pet. Not exactly a bad thing. That just means you can get away with more shit. Yeah, it's like, teach me how to speak the language and then I'll be able to pass the test. Like, for my entire time learning Spanish, I would have been kind of like decent at passing the tests, but I couldn't hold a conversation. Don't call me a pick me. You're probably fine. Last person. Fair. It is. Oh, I genuinely despise how like language courses are structured, because it's fine for people that are good at taking. They're good at learning for a test and then like dumping it out of their brain when they don't need it anymore. But everybody else, not so much. I'm pretty sure one of the suggestions for like one of the years that are currently in school that aren't in their leaving cycle yet is that they'll change it so it's a continuous assessment, which like I'm kind of jealous of, but it's also a great change. It is a good thing. Because I've gotten pretty fucking lucky with my subjects where not the entire 100% relies on the leaving cert exam, but there are a couple that do. So that's nice. Why have you ummed? How have I confused? Where did I lose you along the way? But yeah, TLDR. I don't like how languages are taught. That's it. But like, yes, I do tend to look at websites and or articles. I am on the internet. Those are quite commonplace. Oh, I have a writing assignment. Not for tomorrow, that I'm getting assigned tomorrow. But like signs you of this, yeah. Yeah. God, gotta love those articles. They're great. Definitely. They don't increase type and they're actually believable. I mean, yeah, that's the fun thing about mental health and like disability, things like that, is that an article signs you might have autism and literally everything about me match those signs. Yeah. They're like genuinely look into it. Look into it. See if you think it's like genuinely a viable thing or if it was just those couple things that matched up. Like look into it and then like even if you can't get a diagnosis now, then you can know for later in your life that you might be able to get one. Like I want a doctor diagnosis though. Yeah, fair. The kind of I don't like the stigma about self-diagnosing because yes. But what if the doctor just looks it up? Yeah. Because yes, people can get it wrong. But generally, those people still have some form of like mental thing. And most of the time, they're right. Most of the time, the people, like a majority of people that self-diagnose, at least with like autism, ADHD, that jazz, a lot of them go on to get diagnoses. So, and then there are the more obvious things, like people being like having like personality disorders, where it's like, well, surely they would be the like one to know out of everybody if they have a personality disorder. They're in their own head. And it's like I get why people are like, oh, you're just lying. You're just saying that you have this because it's a thing. But one of the arguments that some people use is that you're taking away from the resources for people that actually have these. Like, no, they're not. They're really not. They don't get any government help. They don't get assistance in anything. They're just like, I'm pretty sure this is how my brain works. But, and yes, there is a degree to which it's like, okay, but you're also just damaging everybody else. But yeah, it's very enjoyable when I'm not doing school. Hell yeah. Hell fucking yeah. I yeah, I would assume that it's that the content is better uh when one is able to pay attention. Or at least I would hope so. I would hope so. You know, it's like there's always that thing that's like, oh, but what? I don't know where that sentence was going. Just don't like people don't take stories like ADHD seriously. Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? What is going on in your head that you don't understand that other people's brains work in a different manner, and some people need assistance to function in the way that society has demanded they be able to. Making it look like it's some quirky, genuinely. It's like, oh yeah, this is my personality. Like, it's not a trait. It's not a personality trait. Yes, it can affect how you behave, affect how you process things, but like there's other personality in there. Like it doesn't, your mental illness or disability of any kind doesn't define you as a person. And some people that, for the people that like fake it, because there are people that fake it, some of them are a lot more obvious than others. Like, for things that you can actually like prove. Not really prove, but yeah, there are people that have been like, oh yeah, I have this thing, and then it's like, well, but what? But you're acting like you're acting this way. That's yeah. Yeah, it's I wonder if I'm doing something, someone asked me to do something different. Oh, genuinely? It is so bad. I'm considering starting to write things down. Because I think it would, not even like write things, but like type things out. Or like, I used to write things on my hand all the time because I look at my hand, but I wave my hands around a lot when I'm like talking or doing something. But then I'd like catch sight of it and then I'd look at it and go, oh, I have to do that thing. Get frustrated when I forget. It is horrific. um, I don't know if I have any like ADHD, autism, anything else. I don't know. I like even if I did try to figure it out, it wouldn't. Like I think I might, but like I'm not gonna get a diagnosis. I'm a pessimist, by the way, if you couldn't tell. But also, yeah, just like how like my parents were probably wouldn't at least not for a while. No, fun thing. But I have quite bad memory issues. Maybe not like horrific, but I'll like I don't. It's hard to explain something that you know happens, but you don't know how it happened. Love that. It's that thing of, oh, we both know that this is blue, but is your blue the same as my blue? And how do we prove that it's the same blue? Or like, why are you insisting that it's the same blue? I hate that thing where it's like, oh yeah, we all see colors the same way, but how do you know? You'll never see life through somebody else's eyes processing it how their brain processed it. For all you know, my purple is your green. I need to try and nap off this headache. Oh. I hope it goes away. I hope it's a good nap. Good luck. Yeah, I have a lot of like I'm gonna blame it on my purple is your green. I've got the best quotes. Best quotes only. But yeah, fuck. I don't fuck. I'm a child. No, wait, no. No, well, I don't fuck for other reasons. I don't really care. I don't care to figure it out. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, I'm gonna blame it on my childhood, but I don't really I have a very hard time identifying my own emotion. Like when they're really big and they're overwhelming, that's fine. And like when I'm sobbing on the floor or when I'm screaming at somebody, it's pretty easy to figure out at least the main emotions there. But when it's just like, oh, there's a bit of an emotion there, but there are also 3 others happening and I don't know what any of them are. And like nobody ever really tells you how to identify emotions, which I think should be a thing that you're taught as a child. Fuck. I will never like parent a kid purely because like I don't think it would work. I don't think I am able to adequately parent a child. Can you lose in this game? You can set it to hard mode where if you click a bomb you get reset entirely every single time. But it's supposed to be a vibey game. What's a bomb? It's the triangles. It's what you mark with the triangles. Technically they might not be referred to as bombs, but yeah, I came into this game from Minesweeper. You're not supposed to hit the triangles. Yes. You mark down these ones, and if you click on them, then you fucking die. Yeah, I don't think that me parenting a kid would work well. I think I'd probably traumatize it in far too many ways. Once again, blaming it on my childhood of not really knowing what exactly that's supposed to look like. Of like, yeah. No, okay, I'm gonna talk about a thing, and it's gonna get so incredibly personal, and I'm sorry if it makes anybody uncomfortable, but I I need to, because I can't really talk about it anywhere else, because I fear people's reactions. Because it's like, are my friends very understanding? Yes, they are so incredibly understanding. That is the problem in some cases, because they try too hard to be understanding, and then that blows over into them panicking for no reason. And yeah, so yeah, I have memory issues. I have large gaps in my memory. Take into account, I'm not 18 yet. I am. It has not been that long since my childhood. By all means, I should remember it. I don't. And, like, that in and of itself isn't the problem. Well, no, I don't remember it, but the only things that I can recall are things that other people have told me about my childhood. Or, like, memories associated with pictures. So, those are the only ones that I can really remember. Like, at one point when I was at my grandma's house, I jumped over a fence and I skinned my knee, and I didn't realize until I felt the blood dripping down my leg, and then I started crying about it. And for some reason, at some point, like, my grandma took us to get ice cream because I wouldn't shut the fuck up. And she took a picture of us afterwards, and that's why I remember that. Yeah, I don't think my grandmother liked me very much as a small child. Probably because, I don't know. Like, she's fine with me now, but I don't think she liked me as, like, below 9. But yeah. And, like, so it is so hard to, like, because there are some other things I remember, but there are such things that I don't remember, that I don't, like, there are all these reactions that I have that I know were caused by something, but I don't know what, and I don't, the constant second guessing yourself when you can't remember exactly what happened to cause the reaction that you're having is torturous. It's like imposter syndrome, but turned up to 500, because it's not just, oh, I went through this thing, but I shouldn't be reacting this way. It's something happened, I don't know what caused this, so I'm making it up. And sure, yeah, there are some things that I remember. Most of them, like, the ones that I can remember, but I know didn't come from pictures, are because people don't tend to take pictures when there is fighting going on. Unsurprisingly. But it is the worst thing in the world to react to something in a way and you don't know what caused it, so you can't talk yourself out of thinking that you're lying. And it's also like, I don't know how bad a lot of situations are. Because, like, sure, I can say that I think they were pretty bad, but was that a one-time thing, or was that, like, consistent? I don't know. The memories aren't there. And I don't know if that, in and of itself, is proof that something happened, or not. It's like, it is a constant second guessing of every thought that passes through your head. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I will now be emotionally unavailable. Anyway, this looks like a pizza. This right here, I'm brightening the mood. This reminds me of a pizza. One day I'm gonna do a whole, like, 3-hour talk just about mental health. How shit it is. That day, however, is not today, my friend. So I shall leave you with that little tidbit of information. And I shall continue on unearthing the mines in my pizza. Oh, damn, that was lucky. Yeah. So, the gist of that, I don't know. I have trust issues, and at this point, they're mostly rooted in myself. And, okay, no, I'm back. And then it's also that whole thing of second guessing if something actually happened at all. What the fuck? It's like, did this scenario actually happen? Or am I misremembering? Am I making it up? Did this even happen? Can anybody prove that it happened? But yes, so that's my emotional baggage. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. This is a snail. Or a French horn. French horns are cool. French horns are fun. And I desperately need to pee. Oh shit, how the fuck do I do this? I don't know how to do this. Sorry, I have a headache. And I'll just leave you with the Hexceed music. I'm not bothered to change it. Yes, I will be back in 2 to 4 minutes. If you've been here for a while, get something to drink, preferably not vodka or vinegar. But yeah, I'll be back. Take care of yourself. Ba-da-dum. If I couldn't change the scene back, I'm a mess. But it's fine. I'll see you on the other side. Anyway, now that I'm no more emotionally dysregulated, what do you want to talk about? Well, no, really, unless you do have a topic. What did I just break? Okay, it's a box. It's fine. 'Tis grand. It was an empty box as well. Really don't know why it's still there, but it is. So we deal. We deal. But to be like, have I cursed yet? But I probably have. Let's be completely honest here. Me we're talking about. Yes, I have. Okay. It's a natural reaction because I have issues with authority. Is that? It is. Hell yeah. Now here's the question. Are we gonna finish this entire thing today? Or not? When do I need to... I probably have a bit of time. It's really... When am I either, one, feeling like I'm about to pass out, or two, feeling like I need to do homework? And honestly, I feel like neither right now. So I will continue to avoid my homework by doing this instead. Nah, it's not that much. Unsurprising for today. Like, it's a Thursday. Normally they're like, have 17 heapings of homework. And suffer. Hey, look at me fucking go. I'm great at this game. Absolutely fantastic. 1s, 2s, and 3s get a little boring after a while, don't they? Like, I wish they'd throw in something real spicy like a 6. Or a 9. God, I'd love to see a 9. That would be like physically jarring to see a 9. I want to know how I'd react to seeing a 9. That would be fun. Wait, how do numbers work? Ooh. Okay. clicking is the only impressive thing I can do. Fucking loud. It's not like, ooh, soft click. No, it's a bitch of a click. It's... I think... when I was younger, I was like, oh, I can't whistle. What do I do with myself? What do I do with myself? I can't whistle. So I learned how to do, like, just other random noises. And one of the... did you forcibly do that? The clicking? Or the... oh, or the... if it was one of those, then yes, I did those on... the frog thing? Yeah, I did that on purpose. It's what I call, a subdued scream, because I can't exactly just scream at the top of my lungs in my house. So I do the weird voice wibble thing. I don't actually know how it happens. But it sure does. I can do impressions of a myriad of animals, most of which are shit. I will not lie. But some of them are pretty fun. I used to be really good at meowing. Don't know why. Don't know why I can't anymore. Okay, then do it. Well, okay, can we do the pigeon noise? Because, yeah, I don't know how the pigeon noise sounds. Or are you asking for the frog noise? Okay. To know you. Good to know that you accept, the noises. Feel good. Sorry for the microphone sounds. I had to get it away from my face so that I wouldn't bash off of you. The rest are pretty shit. The rest are pretty shit. Not gonna. Those frogs and pigeons are about the only two things that I can do the rest. Yeah. Seen a cat on. I promise no quality. I'm offering stupidity here. I'm offering funny haha. Person made silly noise. Nah. It used to be better. Not anymore though. In the guinea pig one. I can make fantastic gerbil noises because they just kind of stomp their feet. They very much like stomping their feet. Or just start hitting something. No, they don't like stomping their feet. They do it out of stress, to warn other gerbils that may be around them that they feel like danger is approaching. So fucking run. So I think it also could be an assurance that the other gerbil is nearby. Either that, or it is like actually like I'm threatening you, you motherfucker. Because for a time we had them in two separate smaller cages. Stomping while stressed? Yeah. You know what? I also stomp while stressed sometimes. Really stressed. But when the foots need to move, they need to move. Sorry, I've not been paying attention to this. Fuck. Fucking hell, my guy. What do we do now? Guinea pigs basically just they do that. They make that noise. I don't know what that means. I haven't actually had a guinea pig in a long time. So I just kind of forgot. Fuck. No. Okay, that's two. I heard a sheep. Everybody's like, oh, they baa. I don't think I've ever actually heard a sheep, though. Weird. Okay, no, I probably have. But I don't remember hearing a sheep. Not exactly a memory I retained. I do think the frog was a more recent development. I do also think that a parrot thought that I was flirting with them at some point. I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know how parrots exist. Either that or the parrot was just like, ah yes, this human. I like this human. But yeah, it wasn't my parrot. It was a parrot in a shop that eventually got stolen, which was fucking heartbreaking to me at like 11. Like, fuck. Fuck, the bird's gone. What do I do with my life now? That was one of the places in which I really refined my pigeon noise, because I was like, ah yes, make a pigeon noise at the parrot. Go on, do it. Do it. Make the pigeon noise at the parrot. You know you want to. You know you have to. Yeah. So I made pigeon noises at the parrot. You must make the pigeon noise. Must. Are required to. Momento, por favor. No, we did a debate in Spanish class at some point where we were. It was like some point in our second year or something. Technically, like our first 3 months of actual Spanish classes. We didn't have a teacher for the first like year and a bit. But at some point, during the Spanish classes. Um, there was a class where we were learning foods, and while learning foods, our teacher decided to make us do like a debate so that we could like work on like answering questions, basically. One of the things was do you like water? I was the only person that said no. I would like to defend myself on this though. It's not that I don't think water is important. It's that I don't like the taste. Because no matter what you say, water has a fucking taste. It might not be like, oh, all water tastes the same. It might not be that inherently water itself has a taste. But water gets affected by the things around it and therefore acquires a taste. So, and the taste of water is bad. It's bad. It's just shite. It's not good. It could not be. I'm not even sure if it's actually that bad, or it's just that everybody's like, oh yeah, water tastes so good. Num 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 num. It's like, it's infuriating. What are you talking about? No, it isn't. Stop lying. Stop it. Don't lie to my face like that. I've had water too. I know what it tastes like. I know what it tastes like. Don't you dare try to lie to me, bitch. How could you? Having mentioned gerbils, we've had many a gerbil, yeah. We've had either 4 or 5. I do not know the exact. It's one or the other. I might be mixing 2 together. I might be separating 1 into 2. I'm not sure, but yeah, about 4 or 5. Definitely at least 4. It didn't help that one of them had several names. So that was nice. But yeah, we've had at least 4, and I'm pretty sure our current one is going to be our last, at the very least for a while, because I don't know. It just moved on from gerbils, I guess. Like, they're delightful, but there are a lot of little things that you need to make sure don't go wrong. And recently, the last one, is still alive, but he's gotten like a thing on his stomach, and we don't know what it is. We think it could be like he's rubbed it, like climbing on and off of stuff, or like he's snagged it on something, but it's just, don't fucking know. Yes, I do believe that this may be a fuck. I don't know how you were supposed to do that. Boom. Okay. That's that accomplished. Um, uh, what other? I could talk about Old Irish gods or Celtic pagan. Irish pagan? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. One of, well, really only one of them. One of the Irish gods was known as Morgan, or on Morgan, or on Morgana, whatever. Basically, same gist as the name. And nobody knows exactly what it translates to because it was in Old Irish, which has been basically lost. But people have basically come to the gist that it's like either like something along the lines of like Great Queen or Phantom Queen or something along the lines of that. There are other versions of it, but most people seem to say that they're like wrong or like, or maybe not even wrong in general, but wrong in like conjunction with like the Irish language. Like some people have taken it to have to do with water. But yeah, basically more again. Morriaigan. The first three letters, the MOR, basically means big, great. Wow, I wonder where they got that bit from. And then the yeah, they've decided you don't need fucking TED talk on the Irish language. And if you do, I'm not the one to give it to you, basically. But there are two main versions of her, and nobody can really agree on which one would be the more accurate one. There's the first one where she's like one goddess, goddess of like war, fate, and not quite death, but because that's kind of in conjunction with or like kind of less war, more was a warrior. That whole fun to a Donan thing, it gets muddled. But yeah, basically, goddess of war and fate and a couple other things, because none of the fucking gods were ever like two things ever. But yeah, but then there's the other version where the Morrigan is like a kind of overarching thing for like three goddesses in a trench coat. Where it's kind of split amongst them. The main three, I won't pronounce any of these right because they're in Old Irish, not current Irish. The main three that they're normally identified as are fucking Macha, Nemain, and like Badab. I'll start with Badab because it's the one I'm least confident pronouncing. Sometimes referred to as Badab Kaha, which basically means like war crow. Badab being crow. Because this one is associated with like flying over battles and like being seen at like after a battle is done at the site of the battle and like fucking cawing. None of the things that I read really went into detail on any of the singular ones, more just vague overviews. It's actually kind of sad because they seem not fun. They're terrifying, but still kind of fun. But yeah. Then there's the kind of second facet that they normally give her, which is Mocha, which generally people have kind of translated into like pastures or like fields that are specifically for raising animals. So that would be I don't nobody ever people just kind of went over a name. They never really actually went over what she was associated with, which was weird. But I'm assuming like some sort of nature. I'm assuming. And then Nemain, which is, I think, the most interesting. They've basically translated Nemain to mean something along the lines of insane. Because she would be the one that would be associated mainly with actually fighting in the battles, and being kind of unhinged, kind of. So that she's, I think, most known for like genuinely fucking screaming. Also associated with the fucking Banshee. I don't think she was, because that would be kind of weird duality. Yeah, there are two others. There's one called like Fia. Like yeah, if I thought they didn't mention Macha that much, they mentioned this motherfucker none at all. they like goddamn. But I don't remember what I was gonna talk about. I was like, I have a really fun fact about this. I don't anymore. I've forgotten it. I don't know. It's like sometimes I'll go rants and then I'll like forget the rants halfway through and it'll just be kind of awkward silence for a bit. I'll be like, huh, what am I actually doing here? What am I doing? What am I doing? I don't know. I never really know. I don't think I've ever been certain of my actions before I've done them. Just kind of done it and hoped for the best, haven't I? Why do you think I'm here? There'll be like 4 over here-ish. About. Maybe a few more, but maybe a few less. Who knows? Who really ever knows? There you go. Me, I know. I predicted the future. But yeah, she's like most heavily associated with crows. Just always a delight. I don't actually remember when I looked into her the first time. I was just kind of like, I don't know. She was pretty cool, and then I just kind of forgot that she existed. And recently I was like, ooh. I remember this one slightly. Not much on it. There was... My Irish teacher was she's very enthusiastic about people like basically dropping themselves into the language and figuring out how to swim when you're in the deep end, right? Because she believes that the best way to learn a language is to be exposed to it, which is true. And this week, fucking yesterday actually, she came into class and she had 2 kind of things to do with Gaeltachts, which one of hello, I think we're doing pretty well. I had an emotionally raw moment, and then I went, peed, and came back and ignored it. Yeah, how are you doing? She came in and she had 2 leaflets for like Gaeltachts, which, yeah, if you're not from Ireland, they're basically bits of places in Ireland that either majority speak Irish, or if it's for school, you go somewhere and you're only allowed to speak Irish for however long you're there. You need to study for a test insanely badly, so also goodbye. Fun, love having emotions. Goodbye. Enjoy studying. Really like, hello, how are you? Bye-bye. But yeah. She's not wrong. That is a great way to learn a language. And the first one was fine. It was being like held kind of close by, so I can see why she'd given it out. And then the it was like €500, by the way, for 5 days, 5 hours a day for like 10 days, which fucking okay. Most of the ones that are more expensive, you stay there for 3 weeks. Thank you, I won't do so much stuff, but anyway. Oh, nice. And that was fine. That was all fun and dandy. And then the second one came about, and it was a raffle, right? You could put your name into the hat, and if your name got picked out, you would be given a scholarship to stay in at the other side of the country, from the 16th of July to the 6th of August, and she wanted us to decide within like 5 minutes, without giving us a chance to speak to any parental figure. And then when 4 people put their name in, she was like, okay, 4 from a higher level class, that's brilliant. Like, what did you expect, woman? Like, you're lovely and all, but that... One, we're children. We don't exactly have an entire say over our schedules all the time. Sometimes there's shit that we have to do. 2, you're asking us to impulsively make the decision to put our names down to possibly go to the other side of the country for 3.5 weeks? 3 weeks? Once again, without talking to a parent. Language? Yes. Yes. I will definitely. Yeah, it's like, what did you think would happen? What did you think would happen? What did you expect to happen? But anyway, hello, how are you doing? Somebody that, let's face it, not many people in my group like, but they still kind of, there's some little kid here. Okay, I get where you're coming from, but I can't really control what content a child is exposed to. And if a little kid is on Twitch, then they shouldn't be. Kind of the whole thing about the age thing. So yeah, I get it, but I'm going off the premises that everybody is at least over 13 and has probably already heard people swear. Because, like, 13, still young, yeah. Not stupid. Also not deaf. So yeah, I get where you're coming from. But it's not my job to parent other people's children. And I can't verify everybody's age. I don't want to. That would just be calling the pedophiles. Be like, yes, come here. I've also been. Oh, you're also a little late. I've been swearing for almost 2 years on here. It has been a while. Okay, there's one over here. Good to know. Therefore, there's one there. There are 2 over here. Okay. So where am I coming from? You're coming from the place small children should not be exposed to, like, cursing, I'm assuming, unless I suddenly swapped into, like, a different language. But yeah, I cannot be responsible for parenting somebody else's kids. I cannot be held accountable for like censoring the content that a random child on the internet consumes. Well, brother's on here too. Well, he shouldn't be. There is an age limit for a reason, because it's illegal. Well, not illegal, but Twitch doesn't want to get sued. Like, that's why everything is like, oh, please confirm you're 13 years or older. Because if not, then they're a liability. But yeah, it is not my responsibility to make sure that there isn't a 7-year-old here when I am expecting there to be no 7-year-olds. His parents are sleeping. Good for them. That still doesn't make it my job to censor the content that this child is consuming. Like, if I went off the assumption that everybody on the internet was a child, then I wouldn't be here. Because, unsurprisingly, I don't want to be interacting with a lot of 7-year-olds. Because one, I would be called probably a nonce. And two, 7-year-olds scare me. Those motherfuckers are terrifying. They're like goddamn. They're I don't know, it's just something about them. They're scary. How does counting work then? Fucking hell, I'm too tired for this. Okay, well. Oh, okay, there's only one over here. Okay. Okay, I believe you're jumping on the line. Rock your body and boop. Hey. I say A like I've had any great achievement today. Cold. My god. I'm going to put the gloves back on. I'm shaking. I don't know if it's from my bones, the temperature, or the caffeine in my system. It could be any, it could be all of them. Who knows? Nobody knows. Which is true. Ooh, nice pattern. I like that. Da-da-dum. Sorry, I got distracted. I'm always distracted. I don't have to apologize for being distracted if it's my natural state of being every hour of the day. At this point, you should expect it. Me being half present. I am only half of a gift. That would be more realistic if I was a twin. I'm not a twin. I did believe for many years in my childhood that I don't look much anything like any of my immediate family. The main thing being that my hair. If she says no to her mother, you shall go. What? Oh, okay. Okay, I guess. But yeah, when my hair currently very short. When I was younger though, I didn't get it cut all that much, so it was a bit longer. If the pregnancy test is clear, you shall okay. That didn't really clear anything up, but okay. I suppose. Didn't get your mother pregnant. What? What? I got braces yesterday. Fun. I can promise you it's gonna be a hell of a time and you're gonna be in pain. I might be getting my braces off soon. It's gonna be nice. Might. I have to make sure that my teeth won't fall out of my head. It's always a precaution they must take. But yeah, when my hair was slightly longer, it was dead straight. It was like you would not find somebody with straighter hair in the country. But all of my parents, my dad doesn't really have hair anymore. But like my mum, my brother, my sister, they all had like curly or at least wavy hair. I like turtles. Good for you. And so for the longest time, I was just like, I'm obviously not related to these people. How could I be related to these people? I look nothing like them. And it was like a genuine, like, not really fear, but like a genuine thing that I thought, just because, like, the only thing I really share, like, appearance-wise with my family, other than my pale fucking skin, is that, like, my eyes are the same color as my dad's. But other than that, like, the rest of my family burns in the sun. I tan. How did we get to hair? I don't fucking know, bro. You think I know? I'm just here to ramble. I go from one topic to the other, and there will be seemingly no connection. But I will make it there. I will create a connection, and then I will confuse everybody. It's my job. Just to confuse people. Like, the only thing connecting me is that I have some of the same, like, medical things as my brother. They're not properly medical, but, like, weird, because none of us have ever gone to the hospital for them, obviously. Like, the fainting under, like, extreme temperature changes. I went from hair to eyes to skin. Okay, though, to be fair, those are pretty closely connected. So I could go to goats. I might talk about goats. Goats are really fucking impressive. They're like... Goats are fun. I like goats. They scream for no reason, and I wish that I could do that. I wish that I could get away with just screaming whenever the emotion to scream came upon me. I could just let out a little scream. Like, that's as close as I'm getting to a scream. It's all fuck, bro. Suddenly I can't count. A goat. Fuck. There we go. Then we move down here. I've just kind of been watching like Wendigo, just not really watching, to be fair. Just, it does long form videos and I enjoy that. I've consumed a few too many VODs recently, so I've moved on to just video essays. They're great. I love them. So now I have a weird amount of knowledge on religion and random ass ARGs. And you know what? I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. It's grand. Just the information's there. Like, there's this one 3-hour video that I'm like, I don't think I've ever paid attention to all of it, so I can just play it multiple times. It's great. This is the fantastic thing about having the memory issues. I've found the positive to it, alright? You can just watch things over and over again. It won't be like brand new, but it'll be like pretty new. It'll be like, huh. It'll be like deja vu. Okay, 8. Do you get deja vu? Oh. Been many years since I've heard that song. My mother told me someday I would find valleys with good oars and still 2 different shores. Valleys with good oars and I've recently made a playlist of... Okay, originally it was going to be sea shanties, right? Because I was like, I enjoy sea shanties, right? And then I realized that I don't know exactly... Like, you can get, like, lists of sea shanties, but that's never going to encompass all of them. So I've instead renamed it just to shanties. And I'm hoping that isn't misconstrued for anything ever. Because if I can't actually define which ones are sea shanties, then instead I shall just go with the vibes, which are mainly working songs. Working songs are also good vibes. That might purely be because they've got a nice rhythm to them, a very, very strong, followable rhythm that you can just kind of slap the table to, which I enjoy. But they're there. They're there and they're nice, right? Yeah. Hey, that's a 0. What you really need as a mother is a father-mucking hero. Oh, he's never gonna breathe. Oh, he's never gonna read. Oh, going to jail guaranteed. And she's a freaking monster. Yes, there's a problem. I'm the solution. Darwin had a theory called evolution. And there were other words in that song. I did watch fucking Cyclone, Ride the Cyclone. Don't remember. You know what? That's to be expected. How could you? Um. God, imagine if we were doing this on hard mode. We would still be on the first island. It would be hell. It would be horrific. But on that note, what's hard mode? Oh, Iris. Oh, Iris, you're here. It's where every time you click on a bomb, you get reset to like the very start, so all of your progress gets erased instead of just going back a couple. That was poor timing on my part. I'm sorry. But yeah, I would still be on like the first level. But yes, thank you for being here for however long you've been here. 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 50 minutes, or 2 hours 40. I do this Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The next time I do this will be at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, K time. If you are also bad at time zones. If you're new, maybe consider following. I do this shit sometimes. You're only here for the commentary. I'm never good at the games. That is a promise. But yeah, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. It means the most. Um, I don't know what else. Normally it feels like the goodbyes are normally longer, but yes, thank you for being here. Um, have a lovely rest of your day, however long that may be. I genuinely thank you. Um, yeah, it means a shit ton. that any of you will listen to me jabber on to myself for however long it is. But yeah, I've had a lovely time. Been very vibey. I don't know what we're going to be doing tomorrow, but it sure will be something. And if I can't, then I will put something on the Discord saying that. But yes, thank you for being here. Have a lovely rest of your day, however long that may be. Bye bye. Bye 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 bye.